first learned the story of David and Goliath in Sunday school. The story that we heard back then was riveting, but it may not have been entirely accurate. For instance, we are told that Goliath was a giant of a man, standing 9 foot 9 inches tall. Modern scholarship, however, has noted that many ancient texts tell a slightly different story. The Greek Septuagint version of the New Old Testament text says that Goliath was actually about 6 foot 9 inches. That text also omits a lot of the backstory about David, which we find now in our Bible. The problem with that backstory is that it doesn't fit in with the chronology very well. From reading earlier chapters, we know that David was not a child tending to the sheep anymore. By this time, David had already become Saul's shield bearer. That meant David was already at the side of Saul on the battlefield. So obviously, Saul knew David. But in Saul's eyes, David was still just a young man who was not ready to become a warrior yet. Goliath's armor and weapons were formidable, and he had a shield bearer with him as well to help carry them. As a seasoned warrior ready for battle, Goliath was more than a match for anyone who dared to stand against him. "Choose a man and have him come down to me," Goliath said. "If he is able to fight and kill me, we will become your subjects. But if I overcome him and kill him, you will become our subjects and serve us. This day I defy the armies of Israel. Give me a man and let us fight each other." That sort of challenge might normally be met by their own champion and king, who everyone assumed, of course, was Saul. But Saul was terrified, and all the Israelites were dismayed. Saul knew that God had already withdrawn his blessing from him. What he did not know yet was that Samuel had also already anointed David as his successor. But David knew. Saul must have been shocked when David spoke up saying, "Let no one lose heart on account of this Philistine. Your servant will go and fight him." Saul replied, "You are not able to go out against this Philistine and fight him. You are only a young man, and he has been a warrior from his youth." To Saul, this just seemed like the bravado and overconfidence of youth speaking. David, however, knew his own capabilities. He had faced deadly opponents before and overcome his fears, and he also had faith in his God. "Your servant has killed both the lion and the bear," David said. "This uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them, because he has defied the armies of the living God. The Lord who rescued me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will rescue me from the hand of this Philistine." We can only wonder what must have been going through Saul's mind right then. Was this young man a fool or a future rival? There was one good way to find out. "Go, and the Lord be with you," Saul told him. They tried then to give David some armor, but David quickly recognized that this was a mistake, so he took them off. Instead, he walked down to the stream and picked up 5 smooth stones. With only his staff and his sling as weapons, David walked out to face Goliath. The scene was like an arena. The two armies were crowded on the hillsides on either side of a valley plain, where all of them could see what was about to happen. Goliath sized up his opponent and saw that he was little more than a boy, glowing with health and handsome, and he despised him. He said to David, "Am I a dog that you come at me with sticks?" And the Philistine cursed David by his gods. "Come here," he said, "I will give your flesh to the birds and the wild animals." David's faith was there in his response. "You come against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. It is not by sword or spear that the Lord saves, for the battle is the Lord's." As Goliath marched toward him, David began to run toward, not away from him. He reached into his bag and placed a stone within his sling. You may know what a slingshot is, but a sling is far more powerful. 2 long strings connect to a small pouch, which is whirled around as fast as possible. It is difficult to use the weapon accurately, but in the hands of someone who has mastered it, it can hurl a small rock at 400 miles an hour with great precision. The stone hit Goliath on the forehead and sank into his skull. Goliath fell face down on the ground. The account given here says that David then used Goliath's own sword to kill him and cut off his head. Modern use of this story often equates it with the idea of the little guy being triumphant over the big guy. But we need to rewrite that allegory. The match was still an uneven one, but only from a human perspective. In actuality, the battle was never David's to win. The battle belonged to God. And from the moment it started, Goliath was hopelessly outmatched. So it is in any struggle between good and evil. The battle is the Lord's. There is a song by Yolanda Adams, who is known as the reigning queen of urban gospel. Some of the lyrics found in her song say, "What are you trying to say, Yolanda? Look, forget all about that other junk. This battle ain't yours, it's the Lord's. No matter what you're going through, remember God sees all and he knows all, and all he wants to do is use you. For this battle is not yours, it's the Lord's. He needs a chance to prove to your enemies that he is God. It's the Lord's, not yours. So what you've got to do is hold on. Don't give up. Step out in faith. This battle is not yours. No, it belongs to the Lord." Hallelujah. I think that she captured the meaning of this story perfectly. It was David's faith in God that gave him the courage that Saul lacked, and it is our faith in God that can give us courage too. Recently, we mourned the passing of a civil rights icon, John Lewis, who was right there alongside of Martin Luther King in the struggle. Lewis was beaten and arrested many times, but his voice was never silenced. In 1986, he won a seat in the U.S. Congress, and his voice there has been loud and powerful ever since. He once wrote, "You are a light. You are the light. Never let anyone, any person, or any force dampen, dim, or diminish your light. Choose confrontation wisely, but when it is your time, don't be afraid to stand up, and speak out against injustice." He lived by those words. And one of the last pictures ever taken of John Lewis was him standing in the middle of those bright yellow letters in the road that now say Black Lives Matter. God knows that his life certainly did matter. A lot has happened in our country since the 1960s, but the struggle against injustice in America still continues today. When we decided we were a nation under God, we made God our judge, and justice for all our goal. As a nation, we have struggled and failed with that sometimes. But God knows neither the problem nor the answer are simple. But make no mistake, this battle is the Lord's. Those on the Lord's side must always stand up, and speak out against injustice. Sometimes the struggle might seem a little one-sided, but truth, justice, and love will win out over lies, injustice, and hate in the end. We know that because when the battle is the Lord's, the winner has already been decided. Hallelujah. Be safe, and God bless you.